Some people in this world are on the front lines of the struggle between good and evil, and some, like us, bear witness. I'm Therese Apel.
And I'm Nicole Crowell. You may have heard us as we worked on stories and series about law enforcement and crime. And it's safe to say we've seen some of the best and worst of human nature.
We decided there's no greater honor than bringing you the stories of the men and women who seek out the monsters, who speak for the victims, and who put the pieces together on some of the biggest Mississippi crime stories of our time. Welcome to Investigation Homicide. Hi, everybody. Welcome to Investigation Homicide. I am Therese Apel. I'm here with Nicole Crowell.
Yay!
Yay.
I'm so excited today.
Yes, today is a really exciting day for us because in this job, we get to interview all kinds of people.
Mhm.
And sometimes it's like people that are, new to us and we get to learn new things. And sometimes it's one of our besties.
Yes! And today is a special day because it's one of our besties.
That's right.
Therese, would you like to do the honors?
Well, I was going to let you, but I will.
I'm going to mess it up. And I don't want to do that.
Right. So today we have Amanda Johansson. She is a detective over at Clinton Police Department. Works in things like human trafficking. Well, doesn't work in human trafficking, but works against things like human trafficking, child crimes, that kind of thing. Amanda, welcome.
Thank you so much for having me.
She's red as a
I greatly appreciate the clarification. That was a concern for just a second.
Right.
But yeah, thank you so much for inviting me for the second time. I actually made it this time.
Yes.
That's right.
Yeah.
That's right. We were going to have Amanda here when we had Sarah Perkins,
Yes.
Ricks, if you remember her. We were going to do a big girls' day, and Amanda had a class. I mean, not a class, a case.
Yeah.
So-
That is very typical of law enforcement. And sometimes you just have to make those sacrifices. And unfortunately, I didn't get to make it, but I'm here today and I'm excited.
That's right. So, Amanda, start off with just how did you get into law enforcement? Tell us about you and your career and kind of what brought you to where you are today.
All right. So in the beginning, I did not grow up in a law enforcement family. Like most people, they kind of have some kind of background, someone in their life that was a cop. Therefore, they're going to be a cop. But that was not me. I was just a kid that really liked puzzles. And dang it, I wanted to be a detective and I wanted to solve all the puzzles. I went to college and actually got a degree, which I don't know why I did that, but occasionally I do use my degree, but sometimes it does put my application at the top of the list if I'm trying to go somewhere. But I worked the streets for half of my career. I've been in law enforcement for about 13 years. So I have done a little bit on patrol, and of course my favorite part is, moving into investigations and really getting to help the people that live in the community that I was previously patrolling. And that's kind of what I've dedicated my career to. I've done so much training. I didn't realize I was focusing on communication in my training. But, man, I've done child forensic interview training. I'm a crisis negotiator, and that has helped me so much in being able to do interviews. It's probably helped me prepare for the podcast.
Right.
Helped me for my side gig whenever I did pageants. So
We're going to get there.
yeah. Oh heavens! I see they have ulterior motives.
Yes.
But yeah, I have dedicated my life to this, and it has changed me forever for sure.
Absolutely. So, Nicole, do you want to ask her about the pageants?
Is there a thing?
No,
Or
that's
just
the thing.
pageants,
Yeah, just
in
pageants.
general? Right. Because we went on a trip this past weekend. We went to Kentucky. And when Therese said, "Do you want to ask her about the thing?" I was like,
Which thing?
Yeah.
Oh, there were so many things.
There are so many things to
"Oh
choose
no,
from.
Right.
oh no!"
Yeah.
We went on a 4-day trip to Kentucky, and we spent pretty much all 4 days just talking to each other.
Right. Yeah, just
The whole way
communicating.
up and the whole way down. But yeah, so one of my favorite things about Amanda is that she is Miss Mississippi. And I don't know the titles. I know it's not like the Miss Mississippi, but it is Miss Mississippi. And the whole, she explained to me the whole process of it. And it is a very interesting thing. You kind of just decided you wanted to do it and went for it. And I love that about you. And I love that about your personality. So tell me, what spurred that first kind of glimmer in your brain of like, oh, this is something that I would want to do?
So I want to clarify. So I held the title of Miss Mississippi for America Strong 2023. So it is part of the Mrs. America system, so the MRS system, which consists of 3 titles, 2 being married and 1 being in the single division. The title that everyone knows as Miss Mississippi is part of a scholarship program, an amazing program, but that was not
Correct.
who I was.
Correct. But it's hard to say, like, she's Miss, and then finish the whole rest of the thing.
It's a lot. It's a lot of words.
So I'm just like,
lot.
this is my Amanda. This is my friend Amanda. She's Miss Mississippi.
Right. Which is not completely incorrect.
It's not.
There's just more. It's abbreviated.
Right. There's yes. But yeah.
So how'd you start?
I actually, so my mom and dad are photographers, and I grew up in Clinton, where I now work, which is kind of crazy in and of itself. But I actually got to help backstage at the what used to be called Junior Miss. I forget, they've changed the name since then. But I got to be backstage and helping the girls like get into their big dresses, and they would like change into talent costumes, and they're practicing dancing and stuff. And I was like, this is so cool. This is awesome. But I was very much a tomboy, but I was fascinated with like being on stage. So in my junior year in high school, I did Junior Miss. I competed in Junior Miss. I received the Spirit of Junior Miss award. And that I was just like, okay, I've done it. I'm good. But then once you become a cop, there are no rhinestones. There's no razzle dazzle.
Nothing sparkles.
There's no
It's not giving, right? So it is very much BDUs and tactical things.
Yeah.
And I was working in Richland at the time, and the director of the Mississippi system, system, I guess is the right way to say it. She actually was a teacher at Richland High School, I do believe. And she reached out to me probably 2 or 3 years in a row and was like, please sign up. I think you do great. And finally she wore me down. And I went and I met with the current Miss title holder. She kind of convinced me. I met her at a dress shop, and well, once you get me in a dress shop full of sparkly things,
Right.
and it was kind of just, it was history after that. I kind of immersed myself in researching all the pageant things and practicing, and I got to compete at state. I won my title and then got to go on to nationals. So it was a wild experience.
What kind of things did you learn during that whole, how many, was it a couple years?
Well, so it was a year holding my state title, but 6 months into that, I got to compete at nationals, where I finished top 15 at nationals. And then I still kind of get to help out with the current queens. So I'm kind of still involved, but my entire reign was only a year. And I learned things that you would not expect to learn in a pageant. Like, yes, I learned how to do a pageant walk. I learned that there's a formula for pageant interviews. I learned a lot about the state of Mississippi because I had to pick a state costume, which is probably, I feel like that consisted of the last 3 hours of our trip home.
We did talk about that for a long time.
And Mississippi has this. This is cool.
We came up with some brilliant ideas, and we are not going to share them.
That's right. They are here, and I'm passing them on to my director.
Yes.
But I learned a lot about myself. And I had this whole growth journey that I was not prepared for. I was like, I'm going to go and compete and do fun things, and then that's it. And I gained a few friendships that I would consider like true friendships, and just really learned a lot about myself.
How do you take those lessons and transfer them now? And there's like before the pageant, being a first responder, police officer and stuff, and then after the pageant, what did you learn that you took back to work?
Definitely some of the communication skills that I gained.
I figure,
So in law enforcement, we get the opportunity to interview for promotions and things of that nature. And I remember I've only had one interview since the pageant, and I remember someone on the interview board stopping me and asking me, did competing in pageants prepare you for this interview? And I was like, I guess it shows. But yeah, I think I communicate in a completely different way. And I really try and stop and like think about what people are telling me and try and see things the way that they see it. So we don't have the same perception of how you might see something or experience something. And so that has been a huge thing for me is acknowledging and sitting in the fact that someone else's experience might be different than my experience and I could learn something from that. And so I try and pass that on, even in, interviews with witnesses or suspects or whatever. I get to pass that on. It's just crazy.
That's so cool.
Yeah.
And we figured out over the trip as well that me and Amanda had met years and years and years ago through Therese, of course. And she was working at a nonprofit that worked against human trafficking.
Yes.
We're going to clarify going
We
forward.
are not for trafficking. Right.
And then it came up and I was like, no, I think I just met Amanda like recently. We just recently became friends. And then I thought about it. I was like, no, I did. I met her about 5 or 6 years ago. And I remember seeing her and being like, she's such a badass.
Yeah.
And just being like, she's so pretty and she's so nice and she's so cool. And we had just started Dark Horse, I think.
Yeah.
So I was a baby and now I'm here and we just went on a trip to Kentucky.
Right.
And life is funny like that.
It's a very small world.
It is.
Yeah.
Very small.
It is.
Well, and so I was going to make the cheesy joke that you're basically like our own Olivia Benson. But, I mean, Olivia Benson being the coolest. But, I mean, Olivia Benson was never a beauty queen. So,
You're cooler.
right.
Oh,
We brought you here to pump you up, obviously.
Thank you. Thank you.
So, talk to us about, we'll start with the question that Daniel asked you before we got started. So, these shows, SVU being the one particularly that everybody watches, how true is that to reality when you're dealing with sex crime victims, particularly children?
Well, so I'm going to take it a little bit funny before we get serious.
Sure.
So these shows, of course, I grew up watching these shows, and I had this picture in my mind of I'm going to be a detective, and I'm going to get to wear all the cute clothes.
Oh.
That does not happen.
No.
She's currently wearing cargo pants.
I am
So.
wearing, they are tactical pants.
They're tactical pants.
Sorry.
I'm sorry.
Cargo
My
pants is
bad.
Old Navy.
I stand
so,
corrected.
yeah, we don't get to look that cool and
Right.
wear the high heels and whatever,
Yeah.
but also I don't ever have to really think about what I have to wear, so that's nice.
Yeah.
But to go back to the little bit more serious side,
Yeah.
I do think I can appreciate these TV shows and bringing kind of advocacy to bad things that happen. However, when the general public watches these types of shows, they have this expectation that a case is actually supposed to be investigated exactly like it is on TV, and that you're supposed to have all the evidence that they present on TV. And they also expect it to happen within a 30-minute or
Mhm.
45-minute TV show.
Right.
So, although I can appreciate the shows, sometimes it is frustrating and it does a disservice because we have to break the hearts of people who make the reports and want the updates
Mhm.
because they have this expectation that's built up in their mind, and justice just doesn't get served in the way that it does on TV shows.
Sure. Well, so walk us through a normal day for you. I mean, I think we're used to a world where we know about child molesters and they like creep around in the dark, and something happens on Facebook, somebody's talking about one, everybody talks about how they want them to die violently. You're in a world though where your whole thing is you have to go sit down in front of this guy and establish a connection, or girl, and establish a connection. What's a normal day look like for you?
Well, there is no such thing as a normal day.
Yeah.
But first there's coffee, and then
God.
there's the rest of the day.
Right.
So typically, whenever we receive any type of a report of something that has happened to a child, this is something that we are receiving well after the fact, because children very often delay in their disclosures. And so that's what a disclosure is a child saying that a thing happened to them. We don't say that they admitted to something. But very often they go weeks, months, and sometimes years before they ever tell someone about this thing that has happened to them. So that in and of itself, we're already starting like behind, at a disadvantage, because evidence has been lost. People have been made aware that they're about to be investigated. So we kind of have to act quickly, but responsibly. I think the term in law enforcement, like in SWAT, is slow is fast. I think that's it. Is that it?
Wait, it's something about like slow is smooth, smooth is fast.
Yeah, that's right.
Whatever it is.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you, Therese, for telling me. I
still don't know for sure I got it right, but it's close.
Something like
Somebody
that.
will correct
But
us.
yes,
Don't
someone will correct
worry.
us.
Don't worry.
But the idea is that we can't just jump on something because someone says that something happened. We have to stop. We have to take account of, like, what are we being told? Is this something that we can prove? Is it based in fact? Or did someone fill in the gaps? Things of that nature. So we receive a report, and then our first act is to notify CPS. So as law enforcement, we are mandatory reporters. So anything that happens involving a child, we immediately file a report with CPS, and CPS jumps on it if a child like might be in the home with the offender. Otherwise, they have a little bit more time to kind of reach out to the caregivers and the child, things of that nature. With children, though, we have to be very careful in talking to them. So although I have been certified as a child forensic interviewer, I would not want to conduct an interview because it could be perceived as being biased.
Sure.
So we utilize a unbiased, trained professional who knows how to ask questions in such a way that isn't leading, that gets very much a true story from the child themselves.
Now, is that usually through something like the Child Advocacy Center that you bring those people in?
Correct. Yeah. So in the state of Mississippi, and I can't speak for other states, but Mississippi has child advocacy centers kind of all throughout the state. And Clinton is one of the cities within Hinds County that has signed an MOU. So I don't think we actually have an MOU. I think it's a multidisciplinary team is what we are a part of. So that allows us to utilize the Child Advocacy Center for them to conduct these interviews, which are completely based in science, in the way that they conduct these interviews and get the information from the children. And that it holds a lot of weight, or at least it should hold a lot of weight in the eyes of attorneys who are looking to present these cases. And then kind of based off of what the child discloses, we move forward with charges, and that kind of kicks it off from there. What the kid says, we move forward, and there's, arrest warrants, maybe search warrants. We collect digital devices, and we try and preserve as much evidence as we can to help prove that the kid is telling the truth.
Sure. So let me interrupt right quick. If you're watching, not if you're listening, because that means you're listening to a podcast, but if you're watching right now live, you can post a question. Amanda, you can see the questions up there on the thing right there. Okay. And so you can feel free to talk to us if you want to, if you have questions or anything you want to know about what we're talking about today. So just want to remind you guys of that. We've got a couple people. There is Mama Fox talking to us.
Hey, Mama.
Yeah, hi, everybody. So thank you guys for those of you that have already commented, and we will get to your comments and questions toward the end of the podcast. So, Amanda, when you sit down across from a sex offender, an alleged child abuser is probably a better term. What is that like?
they're people just like everybody else. And just like you corrected yourself in, sex offender. Well, you're not a sex offender until you have been tried, convicted, and then technically you're not a registered sex offender until you've actually served your sentence and come out, and then you become registered.
I did not know that.
So, it is all allegations, although I put a lot of weight in the way that child interviews are conducted, and I do believe the child. I have to also give the opportunity for the person being accused. And so my job is just to find the truth. It is not to prove that they did the bad thing. I just need to find the truth, because that so often can be the closure that the victim needs or the family needs. I think that people don't understand the trauma that a family member of a victim goes through. So many parents blame themselves, and they're like, I should have seen this. This is my fault. Well, that's a trauma. And then if the caregiver or, whatever is somehow associated or affiliated with the person being accused, that's a whole trauma within itself. So these types of cases are filled with trauma from all aspects, including the person that's being accused, because they have probably been arrested at their job or in front of their neighbors. And, if we do determine that they didn't do the thing, we can't undo what people have seen and what people are saying. So I take it very seriously, and I do want to give them an opportunity to tell me their experience, their side of the story. Because there's always two sides. Sometimes there are actually three. It's, over here, and then like somewhere in the middle usually is the true truth. Right. Because everyone has their own, again, perspective and experience. Yeah. So.
I was going to let you ask a question since I've been I've been monopolizing. So,
well, I just know that you are so good with your emotions, and I'm good with my emotions, but I could not imagine if I had to be around that all day long. I feel like it would wear down on me a whole lot. And how do you stop that from affecting your day-to-day life?
I don't.
Okay.
I'm being perfectly honest. No, I don't think that you can, not with these types of cases.
Right.
I don't have children, and I have chosen not to have children. And I think a lot of that has to do with the cases that I work. Mm-hmm. I think that a lot of people who have previously worked these types of cases and then they choose to have children, I have seen how they can no longer function in working these cases because they have a child of their own. Sure. So it kind of changes their ability, and rightfully so. Mm-hmm. So it does affect me every day. These interviews, these are exhaustive interviews.
How long does an interview take?
Well, as I was telling y'all today, so over the course of 2 days, I think that we were in the interview room for about 6.5 hours. And this is me, the person accused, and then another investigator. And I mean, that's almost a full work day of just talking and listening, and the occasional just sitting there and just staring in silence, just waiting for them to. They don't like the silence, and so they will break the silence. And a lot of times they break it with something that is important to the case.
Right. What are the odds, or is it more often than not, or opposite, where people break down in the interview?
I think that of all my years in working these cases, I don't think I have come across a single person that has admitted to doing the things they are accused of that hasn't been remorseful for it. So it's, people are like, oh, they're monsters, they're animals, but they are humans that made bad decisions. And I'm sure that people are going to blast us in the comments.
As you're saying that, I'm like, oh boy.
Sure.
But we have to understand where this is coming from.
Me personally, I believe that there is a very heavy spiritual aspect in the people that do these types of things. Obviously, I don't condone it. It is,
of course,
a horrible thing that a child has to experience. But every person that I have been able to interview has not only provided a confession, whether full or to bits and pieces, but they've always been like, I am so sorry that I hurt this person.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know why I did this. And so to me, it kind of, I don't know, there's a little bit of peace in knowing that they know that the thing that they did was bad.
Well, and I think too, I want to interject too, just from the perspective of a reporter and doing interviews with people. What Amanda's describing, and I can tell because I've watched people comment on Facebook for many years now. There's going to be a lot of people that are like, she should be madder. But the thing is, like, when you're someone who has to do interviews and investigations and whatever like that, you have to be able to maintain that objectivity. You have to be able to find the humanity so that you can connect with it, so that you can have those conversations. So if you're mad that we're not madder, just understand that that's part of how we have to do this. So I want to ask you, Amanda, when you're doing this, do you find that a lot of these people, and I'm not being sympathetic, but I kind of am because we all are human, do you find that a lot of them were previously abused themselves?
A lot of times, yeah. They have some type of sexual abuse that they have experienced or witnessed, or they have a background of just a horrible childhood, just a horrible series of events that has caused them trauma in their life and that has led them to down a road of making bad decisions. Lots of drugs, domestic violence. It's, hurt people.
Mm-hmm.
It's unfortunate, but it just is. I hate to say it is what it is.
To me, it's just unbelievable that there's that many people out there, and I don't even know an iota of them.
Mm-hmm.
And you'll deal with them every single day.
Every
single day. And shout out, we have Xavier in the comments.
Yeah.
I feel like the child would also feel a bit of shame when it comes to disclosing such sensitive details.
Sure.
So
Absolutely.
How do you make sure that what the kid is saying is accurate? Because even as adults, we know our memories are wrong most of the time.
Right.
So, a kid, even, and especially if the time goes on, weeks, months, years, how do you mitigate that?
Well, so first off, very much the child feels shame if they know that the thing is wrong.
Mm-hmm.
So depending on the age that something happens,
Mm-hmm.
a lot of times the kids may not even know that this doesn't happen to everyone.
Right.
So in that, they may not feel shame per se. However, a lot of the kids do have like this internal, like, I think it's human nature that we can
that
tell.
gut feeling.
Like something's not right.
Right.
But as far as like actual shame that something has happened, male victims are far less likely to disclose ever, because a lot of times the things that happen to them, they can't comprehend, like if the accused is also a male,
Yeah.
or I mean, honestly, even if the accused is a female, in the male mindset, they're like, oh, I should have been able to protect myself. Whatever, or I shouldn't have felt pleasure in something that was wrong. They begin to question their sexuality depending on, the sex of the accused. So there is so much that goes into why someone does or does not disclose. Even in your just your demographic, whether it's racial, religious, whatever, even in those subsections of humanity, you have different likelihoods of disclosure. So you have to take everything into consideration. But as far as kind of deciphering whether a child is telling the truth or not, that again is where the forensic interview comes into play. And people do oftentimes use the defense that, well, someone told them to say this. Trying to, we get a lot of that in divorces, custody situations. Well, they're lying and, my ex-wife told them to say this, whatever. But forensic interviews are done in such a way that they don't ask leading questions. And when I say that, it's they will ask a question of, they will either ask, what color is the sky? And the child is given the opportunity to give just an answer that they pull out of their head. Or they might be asked, do you think the sky is blue, green, or something else? So you give them options, but you also give them an option to understand that you can pick that it's neither of those. Because if you don't see the sky as blue or green and you see it as something else, you have the option of something else. Depending on the age of the child, if you ask them, is the sky red or green, and they think that's their only options,
Gotcha.
They're going to pick one of those because they're like, I don't know, an adult is asking me a question and they'll pick. So that's what I mean by it is like scientific, very specific in the way that they ask questions. But children don't know about sex in the way that adults do.
Right.
So when you ask them, what did you see? What did you feel? What did it look like? What did it feel like? And they're telling you these things that you're like, is that what it looks like?
Yeah.
You're just like, oh heavens.
Yeah.
Like they cannot make that
know.
up.
Right.
As imaginative as children are, they cannot make that up.
Right.
On top of the fact that an adult would not have the forethought to practice and rehearse that detailed of a story.
And I feel like you'd be able to tell if the kid is like telling a story because
Right.
they would be performative. And with kids, it's a whole lot harder for them to maintain that quote unquote lie.
Well, they also, their brains can't like fill in the gaps or
So
create
if you ask them
create the spider webs that I
Yeah.
say that we always weave a web of lies. And so a parent might tell a child, you need to tell them that the bad man touched you. And so they come in and they're like, well, the bad man touched me. Well, what do you mean by touched you? And they're like, mom didn't tell me what that means. And so they don't, children are innocent. They don't typically know how to weave that web of lies.
Absolutely. So you're dealing with the accused, you're dealing with the children, and now we have also the parents. How are they interacting in this? Because that's a weird middle ground to be in.
It's a lot of emotions. Oftentimes I feel like a therapist.
Yeah. To everybody.
To everyone. Correct.
All
And,
parties.
I think that's kind of part of my job.
Yeah.
Oftentimes we do have parents who are the ones filing the reports because obviously anyone under the age of 18 can't even sign an affidavit. So anyway, we'll get a report and then maybe later on the parent is like, well, you know what? I really don't want my kid to have to be traumatized by getting a medical exam done or having an interview or possibly going to trial. And although that is frustrating, I completely understand it.
Yeah.
Like, I get it because every single thing that this child is going to experience from here on out is going to be trauma. Every time they tell their story, every time they have to, I don't know if y'all have ever heard about or had a medical or like a sexual assault kit done. Those are not pleasant. And oftentimes they are done in a manner where you kind of don't feel like you're in control. And that's exactly what was taken from the child is control, their free will. So that even for an adult rape victim,
Mm-hmm.
those are traumatic.
Mhm.
So you have to deal with maybe a parent that is going through the experience of, this is my fault. I should have protected my child. And then they try to protect their child by saying, I don't want them to experience trauma anymore, so I don't want them to have to testify. And then they have regrets of, did I do the right thing? It is a never ending just trauma storm.
Mm-hmm. And you don't know if you go through it that at the end
Mhm.
there's even going to be a resolution.
Right. But then you have the opposite end of the spectrum where you have those parents that are like, yeah, my kid told me this, a few days ago, and I confronted the suspect. And I'm like, okay, all right. So when I say that sometimes we start at a disadvantage, like
Mhm.
they know we're coming, they know all the allegations, they
Yep.
deleting the things on the phone, they're deleting all their social media. And I'm just like, all right, well,
Seems like you've got it handled then.
you've got it handled. Yeah. I mean, so, and sometimes that doesn't hinder the case because we're able to pull the person in and maybe they admit, or, sometimes the things you think you delete,
Mm.
we can still find.
Mhm.
But sometimes it really does just ruin the case.
For
and
sure.
then having to break the news that, well, the DA's office is, we're going to present it, but it's most likely going to be no billed, which means we're not taking it.
Mhm.
Because there's just nothing other than he said, she said. And although I would choose to believe a child, not everyone looks at it that way.
So when you look at when you think over your career and the cases that you've had, what is one thing that every suspect has had in common besides just being a human? And you mentioned remorse, but maybe beyond that.
Yeah. I think kind of what you had asked me previously is that they all have trauma. Every single one of them.
Mm.
I'll reiterate, like, hurt people. And every single person that I have gotten to sit down and talk to, they oftentimes, maybe even before they admit to the thing that they did, break down about, this horrible thing happened to me. And so, like, that's horrible.
And that could have been the first time they've ever said it
Correct.
to you.
Absolutely. I firmly believe that there are a couple of people that I am the only person that has ever heard them
Mm-hmm. Heard that confession.
say the things that they have gone through. Or maybe they did disclose and they weren't lucky enough to have an adult that believed them.
Right.
And that's horrible to not have someone who can sit there and say, I believe you.
Mm-hmm.
And so sometimes, like, that's really all they need. I can sit there and say, I believe that this thing happened to you. And they're just like, no one's ever told me that they believe me.
And then everything
like,
just kind of.
And then everything just comes out. It's, yeah.
Well, and what do you find, maybe for the suspects, I was thinking for the victims, but the suspects is an important question too. So once you've gone through this case, they've made the confession or they've given you what they will, it's gone to trial, something comes of that, if it's a guilty verdict. Do you see healing in these situations? I mean, do you see, primarily, how do you see this change people once the process is done?
I don't oftentimes get to experience anything after, let's say, trial and conviction. So you maybe I show up to sentencing. So I can think of 2 cases right offhand where one that went to trial and the little girl actually had to testify against her father. And this was the quintessential he said, she said case. And I mean, that little girl healed like right there in front of us.
Mm.
It was crazy. Now, I don't know how she is now. I think I reached out. Her mom, I think, butt dialed me one day, and she was like, "I'm so sorry." And I stepped out in the hallway and I talked to her, and I told her about the pageant. She's like, "Oh my gosh, I'm gonna have to tell my daughter about this. Like, she's having a birthday party, and it's all princesses." And so that was kind of cool to see. Like, she's okay. Like, she's good.
Yeah.
But she also has a mom that coincidentally is in the therapy world. So she was lucky to have that person that knew exactly what to do.
Yeah.
Or at least knew, like, if I don't know what to do, I know how to find the people that know what to do.
Have you ever had a kid that you went through a case and then came back years later? Or ran into somewhere in Clinton? Or?
No, because oftentimes, like, I don't ever actually see the kid.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So, people think, like, I have this interaction with the children, and maybe that does help me kind of compartmentalize.
Yeah.
But, the parent comes and files the report. Oftentimes that's to patrol. So I'm not the first person that they talk to. And then I can't interview the child. So although I go to the forensic interview, I'm sitting in a different room. I'm watching through a viewing screen, and I don't get to interact with the child. But that helps me to not have that emotional connection. But also, a lot of times the kids get scared when they see someone with a badge because they are telling about this horrible thing that this person that they love did to them.
Yeah.
They do. They have an emotional connection to them, and it's very much like domestic violence, where like a mom maybe hits a kid, or in any type of situation where a parent is abusing a child. They probably don't tell anyone because they're like, but it's my mom, but it's my dad. Like, they take care of me. They love me. Yeah, they might hurt me every now and again. So you have to kind of battle that. So I don't want them to see the badge and be like, oh no.
Yeah.
Like, now the person I love is going to jail. So you kind of have to keep that distance.
Yeah. And
that's an aspect I'd never thought of.
I thought you were talking to everybody here. Like, you had them all just back to back in different rooms, and you're just going down. And I was like, I'm like, I can't, looking into a baby's eyes.
Yeah.
And then going home.
Yeah. And
But that way, I mean, it makes sense, though, because kids can't consent to an interview like that. Right. The therapist is a different story.
Right.
That's a whole medical thing, and completely makes sense once you think about it in that aspect.
I mean, sometimes I do get to see the kids, but
Right,
like they don't know who I am or the role that I play.
You're not sitting down at a table. You're not asking them what happened.
Nope. Tell me about the things.
Okay.
No, not at all.
Okay.
And so it's kind of sad because I'm like, I did all this work and you have no idea who I am, but
That's okay.
they don't need to know.
They don't.
No.
Mm-mm. That's okay.
Yeah.
Is there anything that you would want to see happen differently when it comes to this role that you fill in the department, in the whole system in itself? Is there anything that you'd like to see be better?
I think that across the board, everyone could do better. I think that it kind of starts at home with the parent or caregiver. I think it's very important to teach children anatomically correct terminology.
100%.
Because oftentimes a kid might make a disclosure that,
he touched my cookie.
Correct. And we're like, cookie? Okay. Well, they were having Oreo cookies. And so they're crying out for help. They're telling you.
Yeah.
And you have no idea. And so although some people might think that's very cringe, to teach children those types of words, it could very much save them from something going any further, or teaching them that just because an adult tells you to do something, it does not mean it's okay. Right. Also, one of my pet peeves is when people like pass by a cop and a kid is acting up and they're like, they're going to take you to jail. And so you're inherently teaching children to be afraid of the people that are supposed to help them. Right? And that's not to put blame on parents and caregivers and whatever. I understand it's all completely innocent.
Right.
But everyone needs to do better. And so with law enforcement, we all need to do better at not looking at it as, gosh, I would kill him, I would whatever, because that doesn't give justice, and it's not our place to judge. God is the only one that judges.
Right.
That's not our job. I think that the district attorney's office, like offices, so across the state, across the nation,
Homicide.
I think they need to do better at being educated about how to properly present these cases so that it is more likely that it ever gets to trial. Because we present them to grand jury, which is just a combination of people who review a case. They hear a case and they decide, do you have enough probable cause? Do you have enough to make me believe that you have evidence to move forward? And a lot of times whenever you present it and says, well, kid says this, accused says, nah, not me. And they're like, well, you don't have evidence. And so I think, like, on their conscience, they're like, well, what if we send an innocent man to jail?
Right.
And I'm like, yeah, what would that be like? Horrible, right?
But how do you even get around that?
Educating people, educating the attorneys, the prosecutors about the science behind child forensic interviews, making sure that the people who are conducting these interviews are highly trained and that they are qualified as expert witnesses, because they have to testify about the interview and they have to explain the science behind it. And so, that's their role, and I can't do it for them. I don't get to testify about an interview that I watched. So, and then even getting the interviews admitted into evidence. So it's part of the hearsay rule. Like, I can't testify that I heard a person say a thing about a person. That's hearsay. So technically, having an interviewer testify to hearing a child say a thing about a person, but there's an entire, I don't know, it's not case law. It's like there's a whole section of law where you file the proper paperwork to get that evidence, that interview admitted into evidence. So, even educating, I have literally told attorneys that, and they're like, oh, I've never heard of that. And I'm like, what do you mean you've never heard of that? Come on.
Let's learn.
Let's go. Let's go.
learn together.
And I was really lucky enough to work half of my career in Rankin County. And those ADAs, at least the ones that when I worked there, they were on point. And they typically had one person that was dedicated to these types of crimes. And so they were very educated in how to maneuver through the system and file the correct documents so that, everything got admitted into evidence. There's even some things that you can do so that although a defendant has the right to face their accuser, there are things you can do to get it to where the child doesn't actually have to see the accused.
Right.
A screen can be set up. They can do a virtual interview, or not interview, but testify. And a lot of people have never even heard of these things that have been set in place to protect the children.
Right.
And it's crazy to me. Of course, I hadn't heard of it until this attorney told me about it. And I was like, that's fascinating. I need to know more. I need to tell everyone about this.
Yeah.
Right.
But I mean, just education about this type of stuff.
Now, you said education, and so I need to ask a question that is one of my pet peeves.
Oh, no.
Oh boy.
As a reporter
Yes.
and a former teacher.
Oh, heavens.
Yeah. So when I was a teacher, I worked with junior high for 3 years. In that time, I was the one who actually said to officials that I was curious about this other teacher, who, as it turned out, once I left, after everybody was mad at me for how dare I say it, he was convicted of molesting several of the younger girls that were, we're talking between 6th and 9th grade for several years. In that time, there were also a couple of other teachers who, for instance, waited until a girl turned 18 to suddenly date her or things like that. As a reporter, I report on teachers who are accused of child crimes or people in, like, so scout leaders, teachers, youth directors, things like that, who are in these positions of authority. And I report on that more than I report on cops accused of things. But the cops are the ones that we as a society are mad at.
Right.
How often do you see, like in real life, and I realize you've been a couple of places and you can't speak for the whole world, but how often do you see people of authority that are in trusted positions that are implicated in these things?
Well, I think that I need to specify your definition of a person in authority or a trusted position versus my definition. Because I believe that if you are an adult, a grandparent, an uncle,
Fair enough,
a parent, whatever, you are a trusted authority.
Mm-hmm.
And I do believe that that is kind of written in the law now, because I got told about it in the case that I was assisting with yesterday and today. And I was like, I don't think it says that. I think it has to be a coach, a scout leader, a teacher, whatever. And I'll be danged if I wasn't wrong.
Good.
And education.
But yeah, I mean,
yeah. But yeah, and I think that shows a progression in the law that people are like, we need to hold these people accountable.
Right.
But in the typical definition of someone who is a position of trust, a position of authority, I think maybe two of the cases that I've worked. But again, we typically only deal with cases that get reported.
Yeah.
So there's no telling how many cases are out there that have not been reported. Again, I say I grew up in Clinton, and I know that there was a teacher. I don't know what school that teacher worked at. I don't recall, and I don't recall what they taught. But I remember the name, and I remember that teacher was one of my sister's teachers because I have two older sisters. Yeah. And I was like, wow, that's crazy. Now, of course, my sister was never a victim of that. But, I think that a lot of people either don't disclose, especially when it involves like an actual teacher. A lot of things are glorified where, a boy who fantasizes about hooking up with the librarian or their teacher or whatever, well, that's a high five moment. Whereas in reality, with the letter of the law, it's a crime. But is the boy going to disclose that? No, they're pumped up about it. Now, some of them do disclose, but a crime happened, but no one talks about it.
Right.
Yeah, it is frustrating to know that there are people out there that, whether intentionally or unintentionally, got into a profession where their duty is to educate and protect children, and then they take advantage of it.
Yeah. There was a big one where I remember two specific instances when I was growing up where one was a church leader. I don't know what church or anything. And it was one of my friend's sisters that he had assaulted over and over and over and over again. And she was like, for years, from like 12 to 18. Wow. And she finally came forward, but she didn't come forward until, I'd say, her 20s, maybe 30s. She was older than us.
That's not unusual.
Yeah. And then we actually had and this is more vulnerable, but we had a family friend who was very, very close to us. We called him, he was at our house. And then one day my mom came into me and she was like, Uncle so-and-so was just arrested for child pornography at his house, blah, blah, blah. She said, did he ever do anything to you? And I said, I don't think so. But when you're a kid, like, you kind of
what do you mean?
Like, what do you mean? Like, that was my, call him Uncle Bob, whatever.
Right.
That was my Uncle Bob. Like, I was just hanging out with him. I still to this day don't know.
Yeah.
And not to say that anything did happen or it didn't happen,
Mm-hmm.
but how are you supposed to confirm or deny
Mm-hmm.
when, as a kid, like you said, as a kid, that was the first thing I thought of. And I was sitting here thinking, like, am I going to share or not? But you don't know.
Yeah.
And even if it didn't, great. If it did, then great. Nobody remembers. But, you know, like, my mom's not going to like me saying that. But all in all, to say that everybody has those stories of people who maybe you trusted them or you knew that they were people who people trusted.
Yeah.
And when you see it over and over again, it's just kind of like,
Wow. Yeah.
that's kind of shitty.
Yeah.
I don't.
It's horrible. And when you speak about someone in the church, like that creates such a
Mhm.
church hurt in like across the church,
Mhm.
across the nation, whenever they are talking about, well, these pastors are doing these bad things, and it's not, it makes people look at the church different.
Yeah.
Where, you know,
It was just one person.
it was one
Yeah.
person.
in this church. It just happened to be that this was the biggest one
Right.
in
Yeah.
our area at the
Yeah.
time. And it was one of the newer ones where, like, it was when the more non-denominational stuff started going on, and it was just an influx of people.
Yeah.
And, you know, they just started going because it was, I went with them all the time just to hang out.
Yep.
And never met this guy. But when it came forward, I was like, oh, shit.
Yeah.
Yeah.
These
There's
types
no
of
way. And everybody is like, there's no way.
Yeah.
There's no
Yeah.
way. How could he could
But if he seemed like a child molester, that
and then it came
you
out
know, he wouldn't
and
be a church guy.
you know, and yeah, but you know, what are you gonna do? Sorry.
Well, most people have a hard time believing because they think they know people. And if
Yeah.
I have learned anything, it's you never know someone fully. You
Mm-mm.
never know someone fully. And the reach that these crimes have in how it hurts the people that it directly affects, and then the ripple effect of people stop trusting.
Mhm.
It's
It goes on forever.
forever. There's not enough therapists in the world.
No, there are not.
So now we have Amanda, the therapist, detective, beauty queen, all the above,
things. Yeah.
all the above,
Right.
podcaster,
Absolutely.
Motorcycle rider.
Right.
Yeah, I mean, that's what I'm
Yeah.
saying. She's so
Yeah.
cool.
She does it all.
I play a cool person on TV.
Do we want to let Amanda's ego grow a little bit and read these comments?
Oh,
Can we go to the
I
top?
can't read
I'll read them.
any of them.
I'll go to the
Yeah.
top. Can you go to the top, Daniel, please?
I saw some names I recognized, and I was like,
yeah, for
"Oh my
sure.
god,
Okay,
this is so cool."
so Susie De La Riva. I'm not Miss Susie. I'm watching.
Yeah.
De La
There-
Riva.
There we
Yes.
go. Miss Kim, this is awesome. I wish I had the degree too, so I could help her. It sounds fun. Fun is probably not.
It can be.
It
Actually,
can
it's very
be.
rewarding. Like you get excited.
Rewarding.
You get like a dopamine rush for like, yes, I got the confession. Like it's cool. It is.
Yeah, of
cool.
course, of
Yeah.
course. Well, you're doing justice. Like you're doing the justice.
Oh well.
You know,
And facilitating
facilitating
the people who might be able to get the justice.
right. We have Xavier's comments about the kids feeling shame. Kelly Davis, hey Amanda. Sabrina Jennings, wow, Amanda, you are so well-rounded and knowledgeable. What sparked your interest into law enforcement? Thank you for
that's my
being
pageant
so
friend.
amazing.
Sabrina,
When
your
I
check's
saw
in the
there's so
mail.
many Sabrinas out there. When she said that, I was like, that's got to be her.
Yeah.
Susan, great to see you, Amanda Jo, my girl. I'm so proud of Amanda Jo. I've watched her grow up and become an incredible woman.
She watched me whenever I was helping backstage
Oh,
at the pageant. Like she was one of my mom's best friends.
Yeah.
So she literally watched me grow up.
Right.
I think Jay is calling you a badass, but I don't know.
Yeah, that's Miller. That's the boyfriend.
Oh, that's Miller. Yeah.
Yes.
Okay. Hey, Miller.
The other
Welcome to the
detective.
party.
Yeah.
That's right.
Well, I saw GF and I was like, well, I'm not going to say that.
Yeah.
I don't know who this man is.
Yeah. Now you do.
Good old Miller.
Well, any closing thoughts, guys? It's time to wrap up.
This went by a lot faster than.
It did.
I think we should just do this for the rest of the time.
I know.
For all the podcasts.
Right.
I feel like I rambled, but I feel like I got my point across.
Yeah.
I would like to say this place is pretty impressive. I know that everyone like watching and listening, they cannot see how cool this room is, but it's really legit, and I feel very fancy in here.
That's right.
I'm quite impressed, And y'all are
Audio
doing a
Alchemy
good job.
Productions
And
by Daniel Anderson.
Yeah.
That's
This
right.
place
If you
is
need a podcast,
awesome. Yeah.
right? If you need a podcast, Daniel's your man.
Yes, you can
Um,
hit us up and we'll get you connected.
That's right. You can also buy merch. We have a
Yes.
link tree that has all our stuff on it. You can go follow us on all
It
the
has
socials.
everything on it. Just find the link tree. It has Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, merch,
Right.
everything you want to do. Just go there. It was great.
And
But-
if you like seeing Amanda today, sometimes she will be filling in when Nicole's not with us, or if I'm not here, she will fill in for me.
Oh.
Those are going
So-
to be
Oh.
Therese.
Yeah. I better not leave you two alone.
It is going down.
Yeah, we
Right.
might need to.
so
Pick
that's
a safer game.
play a safer game.
Dang
So-
it.
We need
That
emergency
wrong.
contacts for
Right.
you to
Yes.
call when things go
Mm-hmm.
crazy.
That's right. So, guys, thank you for joining us. Next
Thank
week, we will have investigator Greg Jones. He will talk to us about the Napoleon Edwards case. Those of you familiar with this area may know who Polo is, convicted of murder after 2 trials recently. And Greg was the lead investigator on that case. He will join us next week. And meanwhile, we're just grateful that you are here. Feel free to follow us on all the things, and we will see you next week.
Be sure to like and share.
Thank you.